Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Erin. So welcome everyone to STC's Knowledge Exchange. This is a new program we're putting on to help members, especially new members, learn more about technical communication, more about STC and the ways in which we can help you grow your careers. My name is Liz Pohland. I'm the moderator today, and I'm also STC CEO. And I'm joined today by Erin Galilee, who is our membership director and also in charge of community relations. And she'll be managing the chat and also helping me moderate the session. Today's session is titled, I'm new to TechComm, now what? And I'm joined today by some panelists who are here on video with me. The first is Kirsty Taylor. She is currently STC's president. She's waving. She's also project manager at RPM Global. She's based in Brisbane, Australia, and it is 3 a.m. her time, so please give her a lot of kudos for being here today. I'm also joined by Issa Moyna, who is STC's vice president, and she's also a member of the New York Metro and South Central Texas chapters. Issa works at American Express as the communications vice president, so thank you for being here, Issa. And finally, I have Shri Pattabiraman with me. She is an STC board member and immediate past president of the STC Carolina chapter, and she's a technical writer for Extreme Networks. Before we get going on some questions with our panelists, I'd like to start with a poll of the audience. We have quite a few people here, so I wanted to give the panelists an idea of who's here. And so we've started with some very simple questions just to find out where you are in your career, who you are, and that will help us answer questions as we go along. So Erin, would you start the poll, please? So if you wouldn't mind, just take a moment and answer the questions in the poll. I hope it's popped up for you all. We will find out who is here today. And Shri, I realized I mispronounced your last name.
No problem.
I did it anyway.
Almost right.
Pattabiraman. I got it better, right?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so it looks like we've got quite a few members online. That's great. They're answering. We'll give you a few more minutes. I think about half of you have answered the questions now, so I'll give you another minute or two. Of course, you don't have to participate in the poll, but I hope you will. Erin, what do you think? Has everybody answered that you think is going to?
Yes, because this is going to count us, so I was just about ready to close it.
Okay, oops. Wonderful.
Slide instead.
All right, so Erin has shared the results. It looks like quite a few of you are STC members, which is great, but we do have a few of you who are not, so that's also wonderful. Welcome. How long? New this year. We have a lot of new members. Fantastic. That's what we were hoping for. It's also great that those of you who have been members for longer are here as well. If you see questions in the chat that you know the answers to, feel free to help us out. And then what member benefits are you most interested in? Wow, we're all over the place, but a lot of career resources, which makes sense for people who would be new to the profession. Education, networking, communities, certification. Okay, sounds good. And then what is your career level? So we have a lot of TechComm professionals, people transitioning, which is not uncommon for new members, and recent graduates. Some people not even involved in the industry, but learning to hear more about it. That's great. And then what topic would you like to discuss at a panel? This is very helpful for us. We will look into this. It looks like we're all over the place here too. So we have a lot of options for future panels, which is wonderful. So I know that the next couple will be about job interviewing and working on your resume. And then we're also going to have a tools training one. So stay tuned for those in the upcoming months. Okay, Erin, thank you. Panelists, did you get a chance to look at that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's get going then. So today I'm going to ask the panelists a few questions about their careers and who they are, about asking their advice for you all. And then if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. This is a very informal panel. I don't expect us to not answer questions live. If something comes up, Erin's going to let me know and we can address it right away. So my first question for each of you is to introduce yourself and also tell us how you got into technical communication. How about Issa? I start with you.
Sure. So I do work at American Express. My title is Communications Vice President, and I provide strategic leadership and employee communication support for the Chief Information Officer and for the entire technology division. So my role in technical communication is maybe non-traditional. It's a little different than a lot of my peers within STC. I actually started in technical communication as a student at New Mexico Tech. I always had loved both math and science and writing, and that program gave me a way to combine the two. And I envisioned that I might one day end up being a science writer or journalist. I actually started out writing technical policies and procedures. And from there, I kind of moved into some different areas. I got a master's degree in general communication studies. And so more recently in my career, I've kind of combined public relations and technical communication, doing kind of general communications for a technical organization.
Wow, sounds like you've had quite a career. Sounds wonderful. Thank you for hearing that. Yeah. So Shri, how about you? How did you get involved?
Hi everyone, this is Shri here. So my journey has been non-traditional, like many of my fellow technical communicators too. I have a bachelor's degree in commerce with a specialization in corporate secretaryship. And so my background is more in accounting and finance. But during my undergrad program, I took electives in media and public relations studies. And I realized that I really enjoyed doing that. And I worked, volunteered as media and public relations director for my university. And I gained some writing experience there. But it was not until I started out as an entry-level technical writer in India for a service-based organization that I actually realized that I really enjoyed technical communication and technical writing. So that sort of propelled me to get a degree in technical communication. So I have a master's in technical communication from North Carolina State University. And as they say, the rest is history. I've been a technical writer for a little over a decade now. And at Extreme Networks, I work as the senior technical writer, and I handle various hardware networking devices, documentation, and some software documentation. So I can say that I have a good experience in both software writing as well as writing for hardware documentation.
Thank you, Shri. Wow, you've had quite a career as well. So Kirsty, last but not least, please tell us how you got into TechComm and what you're doing now.
Rightio. So I, many years ago, started out at university doing an IT degree. I thought I wanted to write code as a career. It took me a couple of years to realize I did not want to write code as a career, but I was really interested in technology. And I realized that in one of my last coding classes that I did, my language skills is what got me through that, got me through that class. There were no TechComm degrees or even subjects at my university at that time. So I did an arts degree in linguistics and business German. And then through that time, I managed through the internet to find a kind of internship opportunity. I spent a week at a local company helping them develop some online help for some insurance software. So actually it wasn't even online help, it was some documentation about some insurance software. This would have been in the mid to late 90s, and that got me hooked. That got me hooked on technical communication, and I managed to find my first role working for a software company developing software for internet protocol layers for telecommunication companies. We dealt between the V4 and V6 layers, and that's about all I can remember from that. And so I went from there. I've always worked in Brisbane. We've had some great local firms with international customers here in Brisbane. And then after that initial company, I've worked a lot more in enterprise asset management, ERP, and mining software. So mining is in digging things up out of the ground. And then now I'm seeing transition. I'm working for a company that focuses very much in mining, but we're also starting to broaden our offerings into environment, social and governance areas as they become more important topics in the mining industry, as well as providing all the bits and bobs to run our devices, our laptops, our cameras, our phones, our copper wires for hooking up telecommunication networks. So I manage, and I know over the last 10 years, my career has grown outside of the kind of traditional TechComm domains, but a lot of people in technical communication are also involved in translation or internationalization. I manage product translation as well. So dealing with actually getting our products translated in up to 12 other languages. I have a small team. I have a couple of tech writers working for me who are working on traditional kind of online help for our software offerings. And I have an instructional designer who works for me, who creates and updates training along with our internal subject matter experts on either our software offerings. We also do professional development training for the mining industry. And then because, when you're in TechComm, you have a lot of really general great skills. I often end up managing a few other things as well. So I'm also looking after our quality management system. We're ISO 9001 certified, and in the last 6 to 12 months, I've become our ISO 27001 internal auditor. So that's cybersecurity auditing. Often you're a cybersecurity professional, but we're a relatively small firm, so my internal auditing skills are coming in there. So there can be, if you really like some variety in what you do in TechComm management, I've found, I've ended up with a wide variety, as well as the great TechComm things that I love about creating good content for our end users. Back to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Kirsty. Wow, I'm very impressed with all of your backgrounds and your careers. And so from your perspective, what 2 to 3 skills do you think every technical communicator should have? Shri, let's start with you this time.
Awesome. I'm going to list 2 soft skills, actually, because they have immensely helped me in my career as a tech writer. And the first one is listening skills, because as technical communicators, we are in meetings and we need to have really good listening skills to be able to get the information we need for developing good, high quality documentation. And the second skill that I would list is interviewing skills. And this is especially directed at subject matter experts, also known as SMEs, because time and again, for no matter what industry within TechComm you choose to go, for any documentation that I produce, I find myself talking to SMEs all the time and asking. One thing I have realized is I have no shame in asking how many ever questions I need in order to get the information out for the end users for documentation. So these two skills have come in so handy throughout my career all these years. And this is something that I see myself using time and again on a daily basis in my career as a tech writer.
That's great. Those two things go so well hand in hand as well, because you can't really interview people if you're not listening. So do you have any advice if people don't feel like they have those skills, where they could go to hone that?
Sure. So as far as interviewing SMEs goes, one thing I have found that has worked for me is sort of asking for a place, a seat at the table, making sure that, you know, documentation is part of an active discussion in team meetings and in project meetings. So, and you know, and don't be shy to go introduce yourself to your SME and be open and honest about what exactly you do, because ultimately the goal for the SME as well as for you is the same. You want to get the right information to the end user. And over the course of years, what I have realized is SMEs appreciate when the right information is presented at the first go, because it makes their job easier. So in case you're having difficulty getting them to like answer questions for you, make them aware of their value and make them realize that, you know, if they give the good information to you, it means they have to do less work in the future. And there are like a lot of the resources. If I have to like pinpoint, I do see sometimes articles in the TechComm journal and in our publication available at STC, where, you know, sometimes you have topics related to this. And another resource that I use is the Center for Information Development Management, which is CIDM. And both these resources, I find it extremely useful and practical to use, you know, as a tech writer.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So Kirsty, how about you? What two or three skills do you think every technical communicator needs?
So I don't know if it's a skill or an attitude. The number one thing for me with technical communication is curiosity. You have to be curious. You can't just accept what a developer, a product manager, whoever that you're working with, whatever their role might be, saying how things work or why it works. You need to dig deeper and find out for your audience more about the why they're doing the what they're doing, whether it's with equipment or software or policies and procedures, the wide variety of what we do. I really think being curious helps to give you respect in an organization and helps to give you the most that you can give to your audience, who's, you know, often the most important person. Though sometimes another thing you need to have is skills to manage up, and this will be tricky when, you know, you're brand new, and it's different in my kind of role as well, when I have to manage up to my EVP and influence his decisions and try to get him to let me hire someone else or whatever. But also working with your manager and finding ways to try to influence them to whatever your path of righteousness might be about what you're working on. And then the other thing that I find really helpful working in some very technical domains and domains where I will not have the specialty of the subject matter experts is having some level of technical nous, technical interest and learning. If you say we've just recently started converting from TFS as a source control system and moving over to Git, it's been much easier working with the project managers and development managers when they understand you're a bit technical and not just kind of saying, oh, I don't understand all this source control stuff, you know, solve it for me, solve these tricky things. You're much more respected if you at least can get in and try to figure things out and give it a go than if you just can't deal with technical things.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, thank you, Kirsty. And Issa, how about you? Top 2 or 3 things?
Yeah, I think two things stand out for me. The first is attention to detail. Making sure that what you're producing is accurate and complete, that it, follows standards. A lot of times I have found over the years when I was working on a team, I was the only communicator, and folks were relying on me, to know the rules and to get it right. And that's important too, because we want to make sure that what we're producing is useful to people. And so we don't want it to be inaccurate. We don't want the instructions to be incorrect. We want everything to be, complete and accurate and precise. So I think that that's probably the most important thing that I've learned over the years, or I should say, that has served me, well in my various roles. The other thing, another kind of soft skill is strategic thinking. Being able to anticipate the needs of your clients or partners and then suggest solutions that will help to meet their needs. Again, if you're working on a cross-functional team and you're the only communicator, a lot of times folks on the team will be looking to you for answers. And so being able to really understand what they're trying to achieve and suggest alternatives, they really appreciate, having options to choose from, but also working with someone who really understands their business. And it just helps to feel like you're, more part of the team. And when you have those kind of shared goals and objectives, and when you can demonstrate that you really understand what they're trying to do, I've found that, team members really appreciate that.
Thank you. So what I found fascinating is that not a single one of you mentioned writing. And maybe it's just so obvious that you have to be able to write to do technical communication, or maybe it's that these other things work so well in tandem with it. Do one of you want to address that and why you didn't maybe mention writing?
I'll say that I wrote a few notes out before. I did have content creation on my list, but yeah, maybe it goes without saying. I've been in the technical communication field for more than 20 years now. So when I started out, everything was in print and it was a lot of writing and editing. And over time, content creation has moved from writing and editing of printed material to video to audio, a little visual design. So yeah, that for me, that has evolved over time as well.
That makes sense. How about you, Kirsty or Shri? Do you feel like that's true in your careers as well?
I do, and I guess, to me, yes, writing and communication skills is a given. If you don't enjoy writing or want to be writing and communicating with people, I don't think you'd be considering this career. So it was like, well, let's go for the extra things that you're not going to think of straight out of the bat, that maybe aren't going to be covered in courses at university or colleges, that are really a part of the industry. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to agree too. And outside of the TechComm profession, the perception is always that we do the writing. What a lot of them don't realize, that we do so many more things other than just the writing part of it. So it is really fascinating to see that all of us pick like something different other than writing to tell that. And it sort of shows how much more we do in a project other than just the writing part.
Awesome, thank you. So the next question I have for you all is really geared toward the people who are new to TechComm. What advice would you give those who are new to the profession in finding their first job? I know it's maybe been a while for each of you since you did that, but I'm curious how and where you think they should look for jobs today. Oh, I should call on someone, I guess. Kirsty, you go first this time.
Okay, so for looking for jobs, I definitely recommend becoming an STC member, joining your local chapter or community if there is a local one, or definitely joining our STC Slack workspace and asking questions there. Because that's kind of a great virtual non-location specific community of STC members worldwide. So that's a first point. Where I live, it's finding new roles is very much about networks, but that may not be the case where you live and your local network, or it may be certainly very helpful. LinkedIn is often a great resource for job postings, and looking for, you know, certain roles will be technical communication roles, but they won't be called technical writer or technical communicator, or even instructional designer. The title might be different. So do some real digging for keywords and in looking for those roles. I recently hired a graduate to my team in the late last year, early this year. I had a graduate join my team. With graduate resumes, I will look for different things than if I'm trying to hire a technical writer with 5+ years experience. So I'll be a bit more lenient, but what I really want to see in the actual applications as a hiring manager is I need to know you can have good confidence you can do the job based on your resume, and have you answered the requirements of the job ad in your resume or curriculum vitae or whatever you might call it. Have you answered the requirements of the job ad and not left me asking, I'm not sure this person can do that. They'd be, you know, my first couple of big tips, and I'm sure maybe Issa, you've got some more that you can add.
Yeah, you know, for me, I mean, I definitely would recommend, you know, job boards and social media, especially STC features roles on Twitter. I'm seeing more and more on Slack that when folks have roles available, they're bringing them to the community and they're asking if anyone, you know, is interested or knows someone who might have the skills. I will say it has been a long time since I've looked for my first role, and I'm really happy where I am, and there's a lot of variety and opportunity to move around, but I still do take a look at what's out there just to see what the trends are, see how the titles are changing, and see what some of the core skills are and qualifications that folks are looking for. You know, because that evolves over time as well. And I would say, probably for me, the most important thing has been networking. I mean, Kirsty, you mentioned that. Early in my career, every single role, from internship to my first couple of like permanent full-time gigs, I got through STC contacts. Either approaching someone and asking if there, you know, were any opportunities in their organization, or by having someone bring open roles to a meeting, you know, and saying, hey, we're looking, and then following up on that. And a lot of times having a personal contact can help you get into the system faster and easier. It can be difficult to connect directly with a hiring leader, but having someone who can make a personal introduction is tremendously helpful. So I think my biggest tip is, you know, being part of STC and making connections and really using that network. If you see someone post a role in Slack, follow up, find out more about it. It might not be the role for you. It might not be a location that you can really consider right now, but go ahead and make that connection, because you never know when you might be able to leverage that in the future.
Good advice. Very good advice. I always find it important, no matter what place you are in your career, to keep an eye on things. Someone's asked in the chat about what other job titles, since you brought it up, Issa, what other job titles do you see other than technical communicator, technical writer, for jobs that really are doing this kind of work?
I mean, at my own company, role titles like user experience and user design, information design, content management, knowledge management, those are some of the ones that come immediately to mind. I don't know anybody who has the title technical communicator or even technical writer anymore, but information specialist even. Sometimes you really have to focus more on the qualifications and the skills that they're looking for rather than the title.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Okay, Shri, how about you?
I'm going to piggyback on what Issa told, and I really think that there's a lot of information in Slack and on LinkedIn too. And one thing that I have found to be particularly helpful when networking is that if you're at a university and if they have like a job fair, be it in person or virtual, make use of it, because I remember when I was at my university, they had an engineering job fair, but it was never explicitly for people from the TechComm program or anything like that. But I still made it a point to go and make these connections because like Issa mentioned, there are like different titles. They're not going to call the job role as a technical communicator or a technical writer position, but more often than not, a lot of these companies have information development teams. So I found it particularly helpful to go to these job fairs and make these connections. And that's how I landed my internship, in fact. It was nice to meet the person at the job fair and sort of hand over my resume. But they didn't even know about like tech writing or information development positions available, but they knew that there was a documentation team. So they were able to put me in touch with someone, and it really helped me make that connection and take that effort to go meet these people and create that network. And I would also highly recommend making use of your local STC communities. Because again, that's something that I have found to be really helpful. And even in my company, when there is a new position available, the very first place that we look for is through our STC connections. A lot of my coworkers are STC members, so referral is something that I have found time and again to be a huge thing within the STC and TechComm community. Because whenever we have a new position for which we are hiring for, we always publish it in our local community, STC community network, or in Slack, or we directly get in touch with someone that we know through our network.
Thank you. Yes, I think you are all very correct in the fact that building a network, while it may be a difficult thing to do when you're new to a profession, it is one of the best things you can do, because what I enjoy about STC and being sort of in charge of this organization is that everyone really cares about this profession and everyone is super open and friendly to help. I've never seen a group of professionals quite as accommodating of each other as this group, and so it's been wonderful to watch the networks grow and blossom that people are making. And I think Slack, which we've only launched in the past year or so, has really taken off now and is a completely open network. So anyone who's on this call today or anyone who is interested can join that. You don't have to be an STC member or in a community to join that workspace. So it's a great place to learn more about us. So given that so much has changed since I kind of hinted at that in the past couple of years with the pandemic, I wonder what you all see changing in the field of technical communication as a result, and if you have any advice to individuals who are looking for jobs, especially now, whether or not anything is happening as a result of the pandemic to this profession. Shri, why don't you start this time?
Sure. One thing I have noticed is, even in the past pre-pandemic, TechComm profession had the opportunity for remote working, and now it has only the pandemic has only made it even more common, because now I see tech writing positions advertised with the term remote on the job title itself. Earlier, it used to be something that you would, find out if you went for an interview, or it may say as like a small bullet in the job application, remote opportunities available or like possible or something like that. But now their companies are more and more like vocal and open about it. And collaboration is something that has always been a thing for TechComm, but now with everything being virtual, that's again something that I'm noticing, that there's more and more opportunity for collaboration, and you're not limited to a location to do your job. So a lot of companies are more flexible in offering you a position, even if you're not located in the same city or even the state.
That's great. Yeah, that's very, very true. I suspect that also makes it a bit more competitive too, because now everyone from anywhere is applying for some of these positions, true? And I think, Issa, you mentioned that to me the other day. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, what we were seeing early on in the pandemic is that a lot of companies were freezing hiring, or unfortunately, as business was down, they were actually letting people go. Now what I'm seeing is that, companies are hiring again, and it's a lot more competitive. People who were employed during the pandemic may have been afraid to make a move. And now they're feeling more comfortable, jumping to another role, maybe with another company. And so for roles that we've had open, it's extremely competitive. We're seeing a lot more applicants than we did pre-pandemic. And with the ability to have roles remote versus based in a location, to your point, you're seeing, more people apply than we would have in the past. So there are definitely roles out there. And, one way to look at it is as people are, leaving companies and going to other positions, that leaves opportunity at the companies that they're leaving. So I think it's a matter of just looking around to see what's out there. But there's, I'm seeing a lot of movement happening with, colleagues and friends.
That's definitely been true in the STC membership as well. And we have a lot of people who've been joining because they're coming from other professions and transitioning in too. Mm-hmm. Kirsty, what do you have to say about the pandemic and its effects?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same kinds of things. I'm seeing more opportunities for remote working. A small anecdote from my own situation: about 2 weeks before Australia went into our first lockdown in response around March last year, our CTO sent out an email: no one's allowed to work from home without getting approval from me the day before. There was kind of this whole hesitancy of people are just really on an ad hoc basis working from home and just sending out a message on Slack or whatever to say, hey, I'm working from home today. And then, within 2 weeks of having to work from home due to government mandates and lockdowns, it had turned into, okay, well, let's put together a special committee to start envisioning the future of work for our software development environment. And I was part of that group. That was one of the biggest compliments I could get from my manager when he wanted me involved in that group, envisioning our future of working, because he said, I think differently. So I was like, yay, I took that as a good thing. But then, really turned around to now, even though I've been back in the office since July last year of my own choice, that's my personal preference, probably 75% of our software development group are working from home, and doing so successfully. So that is huge. And, there are still restrictions on companies. They may not have legal entities in the right locations to be able to employ, say, a person from Australia, or an Australian company employing someone from America if they don't have their legal entities set up to pay someone. But overall, companies are much more open to remote workers. And that also brings back to some of our core skills that we didn't mention earlier. When people are working remotely, documenting decisions, documenting meetings becomes much more important, whether you're in an agile work environment or a different kind of work environment. A team's decision about whatever, needs to be jotted down somewhere and be available for future reference and for other teams to know about, whether you use Confluence or some kind of wiki or whatever your mechanism is. So that kind of documentation and making sure things are clearly documented. It may not be the responsibility of the technical communicator on the team, but we may be able to remind people about that as we're going through. So yeah, remote working is probably the biggest one, and starting to see openness to employing people in different locations, which is really exciting for people to maybe have some mobility and move to different locations that will work for their lifestyle. So I'm seeing, much more, I guess, work-life balance. That feels a bit of a cliche, but as people aren't commuting, they are able to, whether they're doing family things, supporting parents, children, spouses, or their own personal hobbies and activities. I think I'm loving hearing about people's lives being whole and supported beyond their own professional circumstances. And of course, profession and being in professional associations like STC is really, really important. But I'm happy to hear people are kind of rounding out how they're living and how they're being.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that because we're online so much now with each other, we are hearing more about our colleagues' lives than maybe we ever did before. I know I've always worked with a staff that has some people who worked remotely and some people who worked in the office. And I know at times the people who were remote sometimes felt like they weren't part of the water cooler, conversations that went on in the office. And I think this has really helped to keep that from happening as much now that we are all online. I love the example you gave of documenting meetings, because I think that's really critical. And now we can all see, somebody's slides, and they can take notes, and everybody can make sure they agree with what's been said. There's no hearsay going on. So I love that as well. So I'm going to change gears slightly and ask you all, because we have so many people on the call today who are somewhat new to STC, what your favorite STC benefit is, and what you think new people to the association should maybe use first. Issa, I see you unmuted, so I'll start with you.
Yeah, for me, education has always been my favorite benefit. And even though I've been in TechComm for a long time, I've always found that STC has such a breadth of topics that has just kind of sustained me throughout my career. Early on, I focused more on writing and editing and, building up some of those core skills. But as technology evolves, there are new things to learn. When I started out, I did not know from DITA. And having an organization that I trust, that I know is going to put forward quality content, and that where also I feel like it's a safe learning space. I think that's always been my number one with STC. I have been a regular attendee of the annual summits for years. I can't tell you how many of those I've participated in, but also the webinars, periodically throughout the year. And sometimes I'll pick a topic, not because it's something that I'm even actively involved in, but I just want an opportunity to learn about something new, something that I'm hearing a lot about, but not actually doing. And it's a great way to get some exposure, to other areas of the field. You never know when that might come in handy.
And you mentioned networking earlier, and I think the summit is one of the best places to really get to know other people and introduce yourself. If you can, afford to attend and you can make it happen this year, we are meeting live for the first time in a couple years in Chicago. So, and I'm sure Issa and Kirsty and Shri will all be there. So if you want to introduce yourselves to them, so Kirsty, how about you? What's your favorite benefit, and what do you think people should use first?
Oh, I think for me, it's the, to add on to Issa, I could just say education as well, but education is sometimes tricky for me with timings. So if something's important enough, I will get up in the middle of the night or sign up and listen to a recording later at a slightly more convenient time for me. I'd say for me, publications. because that's, you know, a bit more asynchronous, not time dependent, not time zone dependent. When I get the emails about intercom being published or technical communication being published, I can hop in, I can have a look, I can discuss articles with my team. So I really enjoy that. And then the second thing would actually probably be the network that I've developed primarily through STC of technical communicators around the world, who I can then reach out to and ask questions through Twitter, through Slack, through LinkedIn, and have their knowledge and feel like, you know, I know these people, these are my professional colleagues. So it was that's been really useful as one of the more kind of soft benefits that's developed over 20 years of involvement.
And as the former editor of Intercom, I appreciate that you brought up the publications. Yes, I adore them as well. Shri, how about you?
I'll have to go with the networking opportunities, and I also really enjoy the education offerings and the summit. I've also been going to the summit regularly for a few years now. But when it comes to networking opportunities, especially if you're new to TechComm, or if you're just starting out, or if you're, you know, still a student of TechComm, I find that particularly helpful, because with all the special interest groups we have and all the communities we have, you get the opportunity to go and learn before you make a decision about what you want to pursue. And that gives you the opportunity to look at like targeted webinars, or even evaluate if you want to do a CPTC certification or something like that. So having that networking community opportunity it's just amazing, because there are just so many different topics and so many different subgroups within STC. So you know, you don't have to really take on a course or a certification immediately before like understanding what you want to gain out of it. And the other thing, since you know, we are talking about networking and being new to TechComm, definitely making use of the salary database that we have. And when you're like searching out for jobs, it is really helpful to have that information for a negotiation, or just to know and understand the value technical writers bring to the table. And having something like that is really helpful. And for me particularly, especially I moved to a different country to become a technical communicator, I didn't have really a lot of background in how, you know, both the labor laws, or like, you know, how salaries were determined for technical communicators in the United States. So having that resource when I was looking for jobs was super helpful in helping me understand, you know, how the salary ranges work for the job.
I'm glad you brought that up. We took a year off last year on doing the salary database because things were in such turmoil. And this year we are working now with an economist, an economics firm, to put it together again. And I've asked them to go back a couple of years and look at what the impact has been. So that will be coming out here in the fall. And there will also be a webinar with the person who writes the report to tell you exactly how to use it for your own benefit. So I highly recommend everyone who's on the call, who's interested in looking at that document, to you know, attend that webinar, or at least watch the recording later, because it's very helpful when they explain how to use the data. So those were my last questions. I want to thank the panelists for answering and humoring me with my questions. I've seen a few things pop up in the chat that I wanted to give people a chance to answer. One of them was, are there any other specific skill sets in addition to the soft skills that you mentioned that you think people maybe new to the profession should have? Is there something else you wanted to highlight, any of you? And I'll just let you speak as you think of things.
I'll jump in there. You know, I mentioned briefly content creation earlier. I think, you know, solid writing and editing skills will help you throughout your career. And I think that it's kind of a base level, you know, expectation for a lot of roles. But to the extent that you can learn and practice, you know, creating content in other formats is really helpful. You know, I had never done a video when I first started out, but you know, using kind of those core solid writing skills, I was able to move into script writing and then eventually video production. You know, also having good project management skills, you know, allows you to move into some different areas. Initially, maybe you're not doing the work yourselves, but you're involved in a team and you're helping to move things along. And in that way, you can pick up some of those skills. But yeah, I would say, you know, writing and editing is always going to be something that you can fall back on and can help you move into other areas. And project management is very helpful. You know, being able to come up with a timeline, a plan, and be able to stick to that plan and help, you know, your team kind of do the same. Yeah, that would be something I would recommend.
And we have another question in the chat from Elizabeth Graham, who asks about the service industry, medical, health, wellness, personal development, TechComm, as opposed to product-centric. Are there other roles? And I know that health and medicine is a huge role for technical writers. Are there other roles beyond just the product-centric that you would recommend people, or industries that you would recommend people look into?
I've definitely seen technical communicators working in a variety of industries, and I don't know of any specific roles as examples in those in the service industry that you've talked about there, Elizabeth. But you know, I've very much been in that software development product kind of environment. But I've definitely seen people using their skills across those sorts of industries, and it may be different kind of role titles and maybe a bit more content curator, content creator in those areas. But you know, they're definitely possibilities of using those core explaining communication skills in a different kind of area to the, you know, my box of software development that I've been in. Okay, John's mentioning he worked as the web manager for a cancer center at a teaching hospital. So definitely lots of webmaster, web manager kind of roles, content curation roles as well.
Yeah. I've never really worked for a company that, you know, that produces like a single product or you know, had that kind of a focus. Early on in my career, I worked for organizations that did a lot of research, not in an academic environment, but like scientific and technical kind of, you know, development and experimentation. And there was a lot of opportunity there for technical communicators, you know, being members of project teams and documenting test results, writing reports, especially you know, explaining really complex scientific research in a way that the people with the money, with the funding, can understand, so that they'll continue to support that research. Also, I had elements of grant writing and proposal writing as part of my role. So that, yeah, there are definitely other opportunities out there besides, you know, writing documentation, which I think a lot of us naturally think of as kind of a core TechComm role.
Yeah, I remember when I was working on my PhD, we had a class in grant writing as well, and that's a very specific kind of writing that you have to sort of hone your skills for. It was a great class. I'm glad you brought that up.
And I have to add that especially I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and especially in this area, there are a lot of medical devices and medical companies. So there's a lot of position for medical writers or science writers. And that's something that we often hear even from our community volunteers and members here about like positions in science writing. And that's something that we see that quite often.
Great. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, or you're welcome to come on video if you really want to and ask your question live. That's fine as well. This is not, you know, a formal setting. I would ask the panelists, I think we talked about this in our rehearsal, if you would please put your email addresses or your LinkedIn profile in the chat so that you can network with everyone who's here and help them build their networks. It'd be great for them if they have additional questions later, or someone watching the recording at some point may want to reach out to you and ask a question or two. So while they're doing that, let's see if anyone else has a question for them. Here's Kirsty's. There's Issa's. And of course, you can reach STC and the staff at any point at stc@stc.org if you want to ask us a question, or you can reach Erin Galilee, who's also here in the background. She's our membership director and community relations director, and she's available at membership@stc.org. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions as you're using your membership, as you're thinking of joining, as you're becoming involved with the TechComm community. I think we only have a few minutes left, so I'll stay on if there are any other questions, but if not, I want to thank my panelists for sharing your expertise and being here, especially you, Kirsty, since you got up at 3 a.m. to do this. I really appreciate your dedication to the field and to STC and to sharing your knowledge. We're looking forward to having more of these knowledge panels. If you're interested in attending or in giving us some ideas about what we should do during these, please drop us an email at stc@stc.org. Or if you're interested in being a panelist, let us know. I'm looking for more panelists to do this. I want to get a very diverse group of people together to talk about ways in which we can share knowledge about the profession. Everybody's thanking you, so thank you very much for being here and for doing this, and we will see you next month. All of the panels will be held on the last Monday, if you're in this time zone. For Kirsty, it's Tuesday, but we'll be on the last Monday of the month at 1 p.m., and we will be using the same Zoom link for every single one. It's open to the public, so feel free to share the link, and I hope many more of you will continue to come.